There's a problem with WWE Tag Team Wrestling. The divisions feel flat, there's barely a focus, and the tag titles themselves don't feel very important. We're going to discuss all of this and talk about what WWE needs to do to get out of this dilemma. First of all, when did this problem become noticeable? For WWE, this has been an ongoing problem for many years. Sometimes WWE focuses in on tag team wrestling and it's a lot of fun. And other times, for long stretches, they don't at all. Under Vince McMahon, it was barely a focus for so long. And when Triple H took over, it really felt like it had a chance to get revitalized. And we saw at WrestleMania 40 when they finally split the tag team titles. New title belts, new designs, it's a refresh, and it was going to be a big focal point for WWE. And since then, it just really hasn't. I think this became a problem, it's an inherent problem really for WWE. Not giving it a centralized focus, giving it some detailed stories, compelling characters that want to go after the tag titles, that have the dynamics of relationships together, and just focusing in on it. Oftentimes, they are makeshift teams from the men's and the women's division, especially in the women's division. They might have a story or a through line for a few months or a few weeks, and then it's kind of dropped, or they just spin their wheels for months at a time. Look at Grayson Waller and Austin Theory. They've been a tag team for a very long time. They teased the breakup, it still hasn't happened. And as I said in the beginning, the divisions feel flat, especially on SmackDown. But you can make the argument that both Raw and SmackDown for the men's and women's tag team divisions, they don't have a whole lot going on. I often watch Raw and SmackDown and wonder, who are all of the tag teams? And in some weeks, they do focus in on it. But it's not must see, and the tag team titles and the tag teams themselves are not a main focal point. Judgment Day has the tag team titles on Raw. And while Judgment Day is a massive focus of WWE and Monday Night Raw, the tag titles that they have are really not a focus. On SmackDown, the Bloodline have the tag team titles right now. We've seen DIY capture those belts. We've seen Austin Theory and Grayson Waller be in a team for a very long time, having the titles, dropping the titles, them teasing a possible breakup scenario, but just never pulling the trigger. In fact, in the tag team division on SmackDown, they arguably have like the most interesting story on the tag team side because there's a little bit of a dynamic in there. A little push and pull. You also have the Street Profits, who have been in #1 contenderships for the tag titles, but have come up short. And while the Street Profits have been around for a very long time, we haven't seen any advancements within their characters. And so when you get a ton of teams, whether it's on Raw or SmackDown, where they have been just in these divisions for such a long time, just having regular WWE tag team matches, it doesn't become very interesting, and it does start to feel very flat. Bianca and Jade go back and forth, having the tag team titles, going up against Unholy Union, Chelsea Green, Piper Niven, but it almost feels like on the women's side that we need a couple of teams, so let's put them together so we can have those matches. Arguably right now, as we've recorded this, Bianca and Jade have their tag team division, the women's tag team division, gets the most spotlight and focus in terms of tag team wrestling, where their tag titles do actually end up on the PLEs. And that goes into our next point about it feeling like they're barely a focus. On the women's side, they get a little bit of a leg up over the men's side, which is cool, but they showcase them in the PLEs some of the time. And because the PLEs now have 5 to 6 match structure in them for a 3-hour show, you're getting longer matches and they're able to flush out these stories, which is excellent. But the downside is we don't see other titles, other storylines develop and make it onto these shows like Bad Blood, like SummerSlam. Help me out though, because I can't remember the last time the World Tag Team titles and the WWE Tag Team titles were defended on a PLE, not the SmackDown or Raw go-homes, but the PLEs themselves. I don't recall. I want to say Backlash, maybe? Was it Judgment Day and New Catch Republic? Was that the last time? And then WrestleMania for the split of the belts? We can't even say that on the men's side, they even hot potato the titles, because as we noted, the Judgment Day hold those belts for such a long time. Miz and R-Truth had them for a long time. That petered out and they weren't involved in anything interesting. It didn't even matter that Miz and R-Truth even really had the tag team title. And it never feels like any of the respective teams want to go after the tag titles. Maybe DIY, you can make an argument for them. But I don't see Final Testament going around with Akam and Razor, who are a tag team, saying, we want tag team gold. They're just running around with a New Day. American Made, yes, they're involved with the Wyatt Six, and I understand that, and they're a cool faction, and that's a cool story that they're doing over there, but there's no wanting of tag team gold or any of the titles. A good example of this is the Bloodline in the current iteration, the current storyline we are in right now. The Bloodline have the tag team titles, and they are not really defended all that much. Once in a while, we're getting tag team matches, and you know what? They got some bangers in there, but they're using the tag team titles in with the Bloodline storyline to further that story, whereas it really doesn't feel like the Bloodline needs the tag team titles to make their story compelling. They haven't done anything with it. It doesn't feel important. It's just a thing that they have. It's an object. It's just something they have within their story. But at no point do I feel like the tag team titles with the Bloodline really even matter when it comes to their story. And you could be utilizing those belts with other teams, other factions, to give them motivation, to give them screen time. And we have the Bloodline as the tag team champions, and once again, they don't even go on the PLEs to defend them. And the Bloodline is the biggest story, arguably one of the biggest stories in WWE. And look at the Judgment Day when it comes to Monday Night Raw. Finn Balor is going to be having a one-on-one match against Damian Priest, which makes all the sense in the world because of their story and what they are building towards. Finn Balor is one half of the tag team champions. You have a tag team champion going to have a singles match, and we're not getting anything to do with the tag titles. So what's the point of having them? If anything, those tag team belts should be put on like Carlito and Dominic Mysterio. Give them something to do and maybe defend them once in a while. So at another PLE, we're still not seeing these world tag titles defended, and nobody else on Raw feels like they are built up enough to even want to go after the tag titles. Let's look at the roster for a second. Let's look at the tag team divisions. I'm trying to make sense of why this seems to be the case, because I always feel like when I watch Raw, it's a 3-hour show, and I watch SmackDown, which is a 2-hour show, and I never feel like there's a ton of tag teams. On SmackDown, a little bit more showcased. On Raw, I just never feel like there are tag teams. So you got Final Testament on Raw, and we'll look at the men's side just for a moment. American Made, you can argue that you got the Creed Brothers, they're a tag team. Judgment Day, LWO, you got a whole faction there. And I guess we could keep Miz and R-Truth still in there as a team. You also have New Day, I should have counted them, that's 6. You got New Day in there too. But they are trying to go after singles goals. That's good. We've had the New Day forever, but they're not vying for the tag team titles all that much. 6 teams on Raw seems very healthy. Seems like you have a pretty big division. We could also add in a 7th if you really want to add Wyatt 6. They're doing multi-man matches so far. You could put them into the tag division. I understand that Wyatt 6 don't really fit with their story, their character to want titles. I get that. But that's a lot of teams that you have, a lot of players, a lot of superstars that are milling about, not really focusing in on specific things, and it would add to their storylines. Triple H has done a good job when it comes to a lot of the stories in WWE to give them longer roads, longer tales, going for the saga of everything. But not everything needs to be this epic 6-month saga. You can have Final Testament going after the tag titles instead of just trying to mess around with Woods and Kofi Kingston. They could kind of do both. You can have B storylines within the group of if Final Testament is trying to make their way through and manipulate Woods and Kingston, the other part of the group could also be trying to get those tag titles. SmackDown's interesting as well because, like I said, I feel like they focus a little bit more on the tag teams in there, but it seems like a lot of spinning their wheels. You got the Street Profits, Legado, Apollo Crews, Baron Corbin are a team, A-Town Down Under, Pretty Deadly, The Bloodline, technically the OC are on SmackDown, that's 7, and DIY. That's 8 teams on SmackDown, 8 tag teams / factions that I don't feel like, I know you can't get everybody on TV every week, but Pretty Deadly does the comedy stuff, the OC go to NXT, they're just kind of going around town. Legado doesn't go for the tag titles. Baron Corbin and Paul Crews are fun, but they're just thrown together. So it's just showing that there isn't really a big direction. Even just the top teams, Street Profits, DIY, Bloodline, they're the ones that are going to mix it up for tag team titles, but there's no depth. And in terms of just wanting to go for the tag titles is very one-dimensional. Whereas we have other stories like Judgment Day and Bloodline and so on that have all this depth and interactions with personalities, different characters in the factions, the dynamics of it all. You don't get that with any of the tag team divisions. And when you look at the women's side of things, there's a lot of factions. They do mix it up a little bit more. Jade and Bianca are going over to Raw and they go to SmackDown, and that makes it a little messy because you're trying to have them cross brands and then trying to drive these stories home where they're going to go up against Damage Control. But at least they seem like they're trying. And then on the women's tag side, they at least have a lot of different teams that seem to want to go for tag team titles, and they're showcased way more often. Tag team wrestling and the tag titles themselves can be drastically improved, and tag team wrestling is awesome. It's a great way to tell different stories, understand the characters. You can do a lot of really cool stuff, or you can make it just incredibly boring. So what's the solution? Let me know in the comments what you would do to fix the tag team divisions. For me, a couple of things. Actually focusing in on the divisions, making it a priority. Have the tag team titles on each respective show, maybe main event Raw or Smackdown, if they have stories that are compelling that warrant a main event match. Change up the format. The tag team wrestling doesn't have to be just straight up tag teams, because we've seen this and you feel how formulaic it all is week after week on TV. Spice things up. Tornado tag team matches, no DQ, tables match, tag team steel cage match. If it can call for it within the context of the story they're trying to tell, spice it up a little bit. Elimination style tag team matches. I love elimination matches. Keeping the titles separate for Raw and SmackDown, I think, is very healthy. When we had the single undisputed tag titles, it really didn't matter Raw or SmackDown. If you were in a tag team and those titles were not on that show, I don't know what you were doing, what the point of it was. You have an opportunity to grow these divisions to do even more, but you got to give the audience, I think, and the fans a reason to care, a reason to get more invested in the superstars than in the divisions. It's a dilemma with WWE because they have so much TV time, and yet it doesn't feel like they have enough. They have enough teams, and they may focus on the titles for a few weeks or a few months, but then it seems to peter out. They get distracted, complacent, and don't really want to give it a focus anymore. Tag team wrestling can be fun, exciting, dynamic, but without some real focus, attention, and getting it some spark and life into it, I worry that the tag team divisions in WWE, it's gonna stay flat.